After the planning of this external processing via external activities or services, now we'll see the assigning the materials to activities. This we can consider in the internal processing also. Other than capacities, we can use internal processing for assigning the material to activities. Now, to plan materials in the project, the first step is to assign the materials required to the network activities. To plan the material requirements for a particular project, we can assign materials to activities. The system differentiates between stock items and non-stock items. In case of stock items, the material item category will be L. In case of non-stock items, material category is N. Stock items are entered for materials that are managed as inventory stock, that is coming from make to stock inventory or project stock. Reservations are generated for stock items. Non-stock items are entered if materials to be procured directly for consumption in the network, that is not using the MRP, material requirement planning. Purchase requisitions are created for non-stock items. These requisitions are passed directly to purchasing. In other way, we can consider this as external activity also. The simplest scenario involves assigning material components directly to a network or directly to a network activity in the material overview screen. Each material component assigned in the material overview screen contains detail screens which define information on procurement. So, how this will be defined is with the help of procurement key. In the procurement key, it is clearly we are selecting purchase requisition for network like that. Here indicators will be used over there. Now we'll see the further information on it. The way in which components are procured depends upon a variety of settings. The item category of the component assigned is an important indicator. There are several options. If the components need not to include in network inventory management but want to use them immediately in the network, choose item category non-stock item. That means whatever item we are procuring, we need not to consolidate into inventory management and directly want to use it, that is non-stock item. However, want to post the components to a warehouse first and use the components in network at a later stage, choose the item category L. Variable size items can also be assigned. So the major influencing parameter is item category, whether it is a stockable item or a non-stockable item. Then material and project definition, sales order or a network, BOM. So these are the indicators which are influencing this procurement. In the procurement type, we are using either purchase requisition for network or a third party order. Based upon that, what type of procurement indicator will be there, that is purchase requisition and reservation for WBS element or reservation for network, planned independent requirement or reservations for WBS elements, planning indicator requirement, independent requirement for WBS element, preliminary purchase requisition for WBS element, third party requirement for WBS. These are the different type of procurement categories we are going to select. Now if you see this, the way in which components are procured depends upon both the item category and the attributes of the material. The material master stores information on whether The procurement indicator in the material master defines whether the material is externally purchased or manufactured internally or both. Individual or collective requirements are possible for the material, or the material can be procured in advance. So these three informations are already codified in the material master. The control data of the project definition determines whether the stocks can be built up for your project or not. Category of the sales order determines whether sales order or project stocks can be built up. Using a special procurement key within the bill of material can specify that the components are procured independently of the material master settings. The procurement indicator helps to assign components to the activity. It contains default values for determining the stock and procurement type. We can use the procurement indicator to prevent additional dialog boxes from appearing during the material assignment. In the network profile, we can propose the procurement indicator that is defaulted in the component assignment. So we can see in the network profile we are assigning a procurement type, procurement indicator we can say. Suppose in this example we have assigned PS1, so it is indicating purchase requisition for network, and the default item category of the material and the priority of the stock items. The stock need to be checked from the project, then sales order, then plan, such a way. Then comes bill of material transfer. Project bill of material are BOMs that are valid for a particular WBS element. We can create a WBS BOM by copying an material BOM or other WBS BOMs. We create and edit WBS bills of material in the material data for the production application. We can assign WBS BOMs to project using the BOM transfer transaction. To do so, we must choose the corresponding selection parameters. The logical link between a BOM component and a network activity called the reference point, which is essential for ensuring the correct automatic assignment of a material component. So here we can see from the material BOM, we are assigning the BOM to project BOM. We can see the black mark, which is the common one, that is the reference point. Finally, from the project BOM to network after BOM transfer. So the materials has been assigned to a network activity. Or in the production planning, from the routing also we can call project routing, then we can assign, that is MRP run plus convert the planned orders. So here production order being used. The assignment themselves are project specific but can be made simultaneously for a larger number of networks in the project. We can assign single items, single BOM assemblies, or a multiple level BOM. We can assign components manually without reference points. How to do this? The procedure will be specify which field in the BOM and network activity is to be used as a reference point. These fields must have the same structure in both objects. We can define possible entries for their reference point field in customizing. Define the reference points in the BOM components and the network activities. Start the BOM PS interface. In this process, BOM components are assigned to activities. If the reservation or purchasing requisition indicator is activated, the purchase requisitions and reservations are created for the assigned components while saving the data. Most of the selection parameter settings for the BOM transfer can already be pre-assigned in the BOM transfer profile in customization. However, the priorities for the stock segments, the checkings of requirement dates, and the selection date for all logs can be pre-assigned. We can pre-assign the name and description of reference points in customizing. This allows you to look for reference points using the match code search. We can no longer enter reference points that do not actually exist. There are special table fields for reference points in the network and the BOM. You can define this setting in customizing rather than in the BOM transfer transaction used in earlier releases. In the BOM transfer, the selection parameter screen contains of BOM explosion for multi-level or not, or requirement dates, whether it needs to be checked or not. In the stock segment, for which plant or a project or a sales order, a preliminary purchase indicator or a real pre-requirements, a type of BOM, the all details can be set in the customizing. Material procurement processes include direct procurement of the material requirements using purchasing. The procurement of assemblies based on material requirement planning and using production orders to manufacture those assemblies. The item category N, that is non-stock item, is used for components that are not procured by the way of warehouse stock, project stock or a sales order stock, but are procured directly by the network activity. These components will not be considered into the inventory management and directly consumed at the receipt. Purchase requisitions are created for these components. These requisitions are passed directly to purchasing. When the goods are received, they are not placed into stock but posted to the activity. So if you see the direct procurement for non-stockable items, once the purchase requisition will be placed, then bid in invitation, entry of quotation, vendor selection, purchase order creation, purchase order monitoring, finally goods receipt, invoice verification, and direct utilization. This is the cycle. In the non-stockable items cannot be managed as project stock or sales order stock, since it is a non-stock. In case of choosing direct procurement with item category N, we can choose between two procurement types, either purchase requisition for network or third-party order. The procurement type is displayed on the purchasing data tab page on the detail screen for the assigned component. We can change the procurement type at a later stage. The purchase requisition number is displayed on this tab page. We can call up the purchase requisition directly from here. If a purchase order is already available, its number will be displayed on the procurement parameters tab page. We can also call up the purchase order from here. As long as we have activated the requirements within network, that is for the entire network, the individual activity or the individual component, a purchase requisition is generated while saving the data. We can always analyze all purchase requisitions and subsequent purchase orders for a project in the information system. So whenever we assign a non-stockable item to a network activity, the activity details will be having the purchase requisition number and the procurement indicator, in this case purchase requisition for network, and info record number, and purchase organization, and some other details can be seen in the information tab. In the purchase requisition for the project report, you can analyze the purchase requisition, assign vendors, and create purchase orders for the purchase requisition. In the purchase orders for the project report, we can check and change all purchase orders for project. Now we'll see the stockable item. The item category L, stock item, is used for components kept in stock. When we save, the system creates a reservation for the required material. The main function of material requirements planning is to ensure material availability. In other words, to procure the required quantities on time, both in-house and for sales. This includes monitoring stocks and, above all, creating procurement proposals for purchasing and production. Independent requirements, that are requirements for finished products, saleable assemblies, trading goods, and spare parts, trigger requirement planning. In order to cover the requirements, order quantities and dates have to be determined, and the corresponding procurement elements scheduled. The procurement element for requirements planning is a planned order, or for external procurement, a purchase requisition. Dependent requirements are determined by exploding the bill of material for materials produced in-house to determine the quantity of components required to manufacture a finished project or assembly. Planned orders are created at each BOM level to cover requirements when a material shortage occurs. Once quantities and dates have been planned in requirements planning, these planned procurement elements are converted into exact procurement elements. For production, this is the production order, and for external procurement, the purchase order. So this process will be called as MRP, Materials Requirement Planning. So in case of stockable item, what we have learnt, initially the material reservation will be raised through MRP, run will happen. Looking into the stock availability and requirement, the purchase orders will be automatically generated, or a planned orders will be generated. Those will be converted to purchase orders. Then the material receipt from warehouse, the material withdrawing from the stores for the job. In the detail screen of assigning components for stock items, we can select the General Data tab page to change the requirements data, like date, check the withdrawal and confirm quantity, and check the reservation number. On the procurement parameters tab page, we can determine when the reservation will take effect for planning. The reservation either takes effect immediately after release or never takes effect automatically. This is the setting we put into the customizing. This enables to release the activity but leaves the reservation inactive for planning. We can make the reservation active for planning at a later stage. So this is the detail tab, general data for stockable item. The current stock or a requirement list shows the current stock requirement situation of a material. This evaluation is contained in the project system under project system material planning. The various MRP elements are reread and displayed when the list is compiled. This means that the stock or requirement list always displays the current availability of the materials. Changes that are made after the planning date are displayed directly. In other words, the list is dynamic. The requirement lists are not stored permanently in the system but are volatile and are only stored in the working memory. From this list, we can display and change the individual objects that generate and cover requirements. We can display the associated master data and convert planned orders to production orders or purchase orders. For example, the current stock list can be called up via individual access for a material number, but also evaluated by collective access according to product group, class, material controller, material requirement planning controller, vendor, or production line. So we can see here, this is the material stock requirement list which has been called for a individual material. Here we can easily see for against which reservation this material requirement has been raised and what is the network and activity number. The MRP run for the project differs from the standard planning run. When the MRP run is carried out for the project, all components for the project are selected, as long as we select them via project definition and via sub hierarchies. The MRP run generates the dependent requirements of components with a BOM and generates a procurement element for these dependent requirements. Third-party purchase orders. Third-party purchase orders are documents where the purchased material is delivered directly from the vendor to the customer. That means we are not directly taking into the warehouse inventory stock. When assign material components to network activities with this indicator third-party order, the system will ask you to maintain the address of the customer to which the vendor is to ship the goods. We can address from central address management, customer master data, vendor master data. So whenever we are selecting third-party purchase order, this material directly will be redirected to vendor itself. Next one is advanced procurement. In engineering projects, it is common for critical components with long and unreliable delivery times to be purchased at an early stage in the project, well before the project activities. Where these components will be consumed are specified. Advanced procurement is used to this end. We can only use advanced procurement if we are working with stock. This means we must use item category L when assigning components to ensure that stock can be managed. To offset the requirements for procurement against those of consumption, the component must be managed in the same stock. The following section distinguishes between two scenarios. Those are planned dependent requirements and preliminary purchase requisition. In planned independent requirements, assemblies that need to be procured well in advance of consumption are allocated at stock items with the indicator planned independent requirement set for the procurement activity. The MRP run then generates a planned order which triggers a production process. The production order will be delivered to stock where it will be consumed later by a second allocation to the consuming activity. In the second scenario, assemblies that need to be ordered well in advance of consumption are allocated as stock items with the indicator preliminary purchase requisition set for the procurement activity. The system then generates a preliminary purchase requisition which triggers a purchasing process. The goods receipt for the component builds up stock. We can allocate the component to the consuming activity ladder, thus reserving and then consuming the stock. So here we build the stock today, and other way later consume the stock. So this is advanced procurement. We are taking care of futurely required materials. Next one is requirements grouping. When evaluated project stock is used, the material are managed from an MRP perspective in individual requirement stock segments for the separate WBS elements. So same material is being used in different WBS elements. That is the scenario. Requirements grouping allows to group the requirements of the WBS elements within a project or for several projects for MRP purposes. The joint planning and procurement of the material components required for a project leads to enhanced logical processing and cost savings in terms of the corresponding lot size creation. Prerequisite for using requirements grouping: evaluated project stock, grouping WBS elements, MRP groups that allow requirements grouping. The assigned components require periodic lot size and must be able to be managed in the sales order or project stock. So these are some prerequisites for the requirement grouping. If we are managing material in the plant stock or according to the individual WBS element, either have no control over procurement or you are fully responsible for procurement. With the help of requirements grouping, we can now determine the degree of control yourself. In the most basic scenario, we group the requirements of all the WBS elements in project into one WBS element. We can, however, also create projects that are only meant for group requirements for other projects. So if you see the background to the requirement grouping, we can have WBSs, different projects, cross projects, independent of project. So ultimately everything will be have the plant stock. If it is a single WBS element, you are going to have a maximum control, and if you are using independent of the projects, you can have a maximum very less effectiveness. There are various ways of group requirements. We can group requirements within a project. That is the easiest way doing, because this is under one project. We can group requirement from various projects in one or more projects. This is the WBS element must be assigned manually. We can group all components of a WBS in one WBS element. Strictly speaking, components are assigned to activities which are then assigned to WBS elements and then grouped. We can group the components of a WBS element to a various WBS elements according to the MRP group of the components. So we can see the requirement grouping options like project related, cross project related, MRP element wise, MRP element second category. Requirements grouping is set as various points in the system. Evaluated project stock must be allowed in the project definition control data. The automatic requirements grouping indicator can also be activated for the entire work breakdown structure. In this case, the requirements are grouped to one WBS element only, the top WBS element. The MRP element indicator must be set for WBS elements. The MRP element determines whether the requirements may be grouped into one WBS element and how. In customizing for the WBS, we must determine the MRP groups involved in requirements grouping. Materials to be included in requirements grouping must allow sales orders or project stocks. We must assign in material group that allows a requirements grouping to this. The lot size of the materials cannot be exact but must allow a periodic procedure. So if you see the settings for requirements grouping, starting from project definition, we have to use evaluated project stock indicator, automatic requirements grouping. In the WBS elements, determine MRP elements, either category 1 or 2, assign to MRP elements. In the PS, determine MRP grouping groups for requirements groups. In the material, allow sales order to project stock or project stock, assign MRP group, allow periodic lot size. So these are the settings are required for requirements grouping. Now the next topic is availability check and delivery. The availability check is controlled by multi-part checking rules. Checking rules must be determined for the individual application in customizing. Checking rules include various elements like checking group, checking rule, scope of check. Checking group is assignment in material master, that is planning data. Checking rule is assignment to order type. Scope of check, specification of checking details for each checking rule and group. So that means the specification where to check, what are the stages need to be considered, the entire details will be defined in the scope of check. Check items. Checks carried out manually or automatically, either at the release or at creation. Checking results, final results. Missing material status or assignment of confirmed quantity. Now if you see here, what material, when is what quantity required or procured. This is the checking rule function. In the network type, we'll assign the checking control. In the checking control, we assign the checking rule. Checking rule and checking group is a combination with the scope check also. So finally, the combination of everything will used for the network activities depends upon the time we have set while creation or while release. The checking availability check will be taken place and final result will be shown. The scope of checking determines which stocks, issues and receipts will be taken into account in the availability check. In the available to promise check, only receipts that are booked before a requisition are included in the check for this issue. The available to promise quantity of a receipt is the quantity that has not yet been consumed by issues. That means unrestricted stock. A material that is kept in planned stock is not allocated to a specific order and is available for all orders. Sales orders can have their own stock from the MRP view called sales order stock. The sales order stock is allocated to an item in the sales order. We can only withdraw components for the sales order item. Projects can have their own stock from the MRP view called project stock. The project stock is allocated to a WBS element. We can only withdraw components for the WBS element. Using the availability check settings in the check master record, material master record, specify whether all stock segments or just one stock segment should be taken into account during the availability check. So in the scope check, we are using warehouse stock, purchase order mounting requisitions, production orders, planned orders, dependent requirements, sales orders, reservations, planned independent requirement. This everything will be considered for the stock check. So based on the status, the checking control function determines whether an order type will be checked, and if so, while checking rules will be used. The order type corresponds to network type in the product system. The checking rule, however, represents just a descriptive text. The scope of the check is an important factor for the ATP availability check. It is determined by means of the checking rule that was defined previously in the checking control, and using the checking group for the material that will be checked. The scope of the check determines how the ATP availability check will be carried out. What are receipts and issues? Which sales order or project stocks are checked? Will storage locations or entire plants be checked? The checking group of the material is set in customizing for sales and operations planning. For example, it determines whether individual or collective requirements will be generated for the material, for example. So in the checking control, it will be dependent upon the status like created or release, and contents will be, will checks be carried out checks, which checking rule will be used, and scope of check depends upon checking group of the material, checking rule of the checking control. Which stocks will be checked, what are the receipts and issues needs to be checked, will storage location will be checked or not, like that. So the next thing is checking rule. It's a descriptive text. The next thing is delivery from projects. We can select the material components that are to be delivered to the customer and then create a sales distribution delivery note automatically. We can select components by specifying the project definition, the WBS element, a sales order, or a network. We can limit the selection by specifying delivery information that describes the components in greater detail. Delivery date, ship to a party, requirement date, for example. By specifying the network data, that means the activity number. By specifying material characteristics, GL account, purchase requisition number. To create a delivery, we need delivery information. Delivery information data can be used to filter for components in the delivery from the project. If components with the different delivery information are selected in the delivery from the projects, individual deliveries will be created for these components. So delivery of material components, it is in this from the sales order or a delivery note. We are selecting the materials from the WBS elements and activities, and quantities in the delivery will be from the delivery note, and withdrawal quantity will be taken from the goods issue. The higher level object forwards the delivery information to lower level object. That means if a component has no delivery information but the upper level activity does, this information is transferred to the component. If a lower level object has delivery information, the delivery information of upper level object is not taken. So here we can see the delivery information of network activity component. So the delivery information like project definition, Via delivery is shipping, which is a shipping point, planned goods issue, delivery date, ship to party, and the delivery address. This information can be taken from upper if it is not maintained at the component level. If we deliver from projects, delivery screen of each component display the various quantities related to the component, such as requirement quantities, item quantities, quantity in delivery, open quantities, available open quantities, for example. Once the material is selected, the delivery note is created with a reference to the network components. We can deliver materials from stock, project stock, or sales order stock. Each position in the delivery refers directly to the reservation or purchase requisition. After the material is selected, the delivery note is created with a reference to the network component. If a delivery note is created when we deliver from a project, every delivery item will have a direct reference to a reservation or purchase requisition in the network. The delivery note type, document type will be LP, and delivery item category will be DLP. This is used for availability checks and for updating actual data for the goods issue. So this is about delivery from project. Now, if you see the quantities for deliveries from the project system, we can see the various quantities being used over there, like delivery quantity, requirements quantity, withdrawal quantity, quantity in delivery, open quantity, all open quantity. And this information is clearly delivery quantity that will be transferred to the delivery, and requirement quantity where we have entered in the reservation, withdrawal quantity, how much goods are issued, open quantity without withdrawn quantity, and the quantity that must still deliver to cover the requirements is open quantity. Open quantity that can be delivered to the goods issue according to the availability check. Now, after external activities planning, now we'll see material planning. Before proceeding for material planning, we'll see what are the prerequisites are there in the customizing guide. We'll go to SPRO customizing guide. Here we'll check it out for the customizing notes required for the materials. Now in the customizing guide, we have to go to project system, then material, then in the procurement we'll see what are the procurement indicators have been customized. So in the procurement indicator, we have one is priority, project stock, plant stock, or order stock. Other one is, these are priorities, priority for the project, priority for the plant, priority for the sales, then control data, whether it is purchase requisition for network, third party, or preliminary requirements, and default item category. So we have created one procurement indicator which is having this setting. So automatically this purchase requisition for network will be done. So the next thing we'll go for, if required, we can assign this for the preliminary requirements also. So this is the procurement indicator has been codified. Now the next setting will see the account assignment categories, document types for the purchase requisitions. So document type is NB for the purchase requisition, and account assignment category general is network, for the projects is Q, the sales order E, and sales document to project is D. So this is also the setting has been made. So the next thing we'll see material movement types for the material movements. So for the project systems, the material movement type is 281 for the issue, for the cancellation 282, and byproduct 581. For the project stock again 281 and 282, 581 and 582. Sales order stock all the same. So this is one more customized setting we require for the materials. The next thing is MRP groups for requirements grouping. So we have to select some MRP groups which we can consider for the requirement grouping in the project. So if we consider the plant 3000, for this 3000 these many MRP groups are there. So we can consider, if required, any one for the grouping level if we want to do the grouping for materials. Now determine WS account assignment at MRP area level. This will this considers in the case of MRP procurement, through MRP procurement. It has no entries. We can go for a new entry if required. So WS account assignment as MRP. If required, we can add this. So this is one more setting. And define field selection for components. If we require any fields need to be changed the influence, we can change from the field settings. We can see what are the influencing are there by order type. If we consider the order type PS01, so now these are the fields are there which are need to be considered as a required, or we can say we can hide also if anything doesn't require. So vendor, unloading point, storage location, reservation, purchasing requirement, requisitioner, purchase info record, purchase order exist, principal agreement item, this we can hide. Outline agreement is required. Goods receipt, GR processing time, delivery time, currency, batch also we can hide. So this way we can. So this is material field influencing. The next one is material overview. That is the detail view, and this is the material overview. In the material overview also we'll select the same order type as the influencing. Then we are hiding batch again. GL account, item category, material description, material group, price unit, info requirement date, sort string, vendor is required. So this settings we are doing for material overview. So these are the settings we are done for procurement. Then if required we can check the monitoring dates. This is these events and all the progress tracking. Bill of material transfer, define profile for bill of material transfer. To transfer the bill of material from production orders to projects, we can prepare a profile here, and we can create the reference points for the BOM transfer, and we can define the fields, and we can select the field selection. By default there are no profiles has been created, so if we want we can go for new profile. Here we have to mention the plant, BOM usage for the project systems. So we can consider engineering design also, and the next thing is BOM application. This we have to consider costing, requirement quantity, and transfer parameters. Material BOM or WBS BOM, and whether it is a multi-level or all items, external items, preliminary requirements, and constraints, plant maintenance, item category, L or N you have to select, and relevancy to costing is required 100% or not relevant to costing. Relevant to costing means 100%, and costing relevance relevant to sales, select sales relevance, spare parts indicator, and once this BOM is transferred, then release for costing, release for planning, release for production and simulation. So these are the things we have to select it to create a profile for BOM transfer. Then we have to define a reference point for BOM transfer. Reference point we have to select one for the both places, source and target. And the next thing is availability check. In the availability check, first of all we have to create a checking rule as a descriptive text. Now for the process systems, one descriptive text has been created, PS checking rule. Then we have to define the checking scope. Checking scope while creation, and so we'll see the checking scopes here. This is one checking scope we have created by assigning the PS checking rule. Stocks we are considering as safety stock, stock in transfer, including quantity inspection stock, excluding the blocked stock, restricted use and subcontracting, check without RLT, and here inward and outward movements including purchase order, purchase requisition, dependent requirements, reservations, sales requirements, and including planned orders, production orders, So these are the scope we have considered for the daily requirements. Now the similar way we have selected one more here for the individual requirements. Basically this these rules we are creating the scope with this checking rule for individual requirement and the daily requirements. For checking the material availability at the creation of the network activity and saving the network activity. Here we can see the individual requirement includes safety stock, stock in transfer, quantity inspection stock. Similar scope we are considering over here. Now after selecting the checking scope, then finally we are defining the checking control. Checking control will be assigned plant and network type wise. So we have to select the plant 3000, then order type PS 01. So for plant 3000, in the order type, one rule for routine requirements and individual requirements. So if you see the availability check 1, check availability during order creation, that is 1. Checking rule is PS for the material, and for PRT no check we can select, and this is checking control. Order type control checks. My God. So similarly we'll check for other one for the during the release. Same PRT check is not there, capacity availability also not checking, material availability we are checking with checking rule, and component check type ATP check. So this is about the material availability check, and these are all about for the assigning materials to activities. Now we'll create internal processing for the material, for assigning the material to activities. We'll go to logistics, project system, then project special maintenance functions, again going to network change, then we'll select the network which one is created and assigned in a project. So we are selecting NU same network, NU 3000.1401C. So here we have to go to activity overview. In the activity overview, in the internal processing only, we are already created the activities. Simply we have to assign the materials. So in this activity, the component overview, here we are going to assign the materials. Going to the purchasing view, here we'll select some material for plant 3000. So we'll select the material, quantities 1. We are not selecting any item category since we are considering as a stockable item, and purchasing organization enter. Now the remaining information will be fetched from the material master. We'll select one more material if required. Again, we are selecting quantity 1. Now we can see over here the requirement date. If required, we can change also the requirement date. Now we assign one more material. These are all we are considering from the stockable list. Item category L means we are considering the materials for the inventory update. Now we'll select material with non-stockable. That means we have to keep N. Then we have to give the quantity. We have to keep N over there. This is, if it is being procured, automatically it will be directly consumed. So we'll put the requirement date. This is again 15/7. We can change it to 5. Enter. Now this indicator has been changed to if required, we can select a non-coded material. Here instead of, we can select each, and this is non-stockable. Then again we are giving purchase organization, buyer, and material group we were selecting, and GL account, and we are giving the price, currency unit, requirement date, and finally the description, non-coded material 1. So this is we have selected. If required, we can take one more. Material 2. Now we assign the components directly to the internal processing activity. Now if you see, this WBS elements has been assigned, and wherever non-coded yeah non-stockable item is there, this for which this WBS element is not assigned, because this directly goes to the network as a account assignment. We can see over here, if you see this component, it has purchase number, purchase requisition number is not yet generated, because this is, we are selecting general data is one, manual requirement date, cost relevant, purchase requisition for network is the procurement type, and procurement parameters if we can see from release, or we can keep it immediately also if required, the purchase requisition generation. And this is purchase data. Here we can see the requirement quantity, requirement date, if required we can make it offset, purchasing group, purchasing organization, info record, outline agreement, vendor, requisitioner, tracking number, recipient, GR, processing time, delivery time, manual requirement date, because we have changed this date, that is the reason why this manual requirement date. Procurement parameters are, the procurement indicator is PS1, PRQ for network, item category is N, non-stockable, material type, procurement is F, type is F, account assignment category is N. Account assignment category N means here this this material is non-coded, non-stockable item. Non-stockable item means once on the receipt, directly this material will be transferred for the utilization. So this is for the non-stockable item. We'll see one stockable item material here. This is L, item category. In this case, the general data, we have a reservation number because it may have the stock. Now in the purchasing data, the procurement type is PRQ plus reservation for WBS element. For WBS element, this is a notable point because this is stockable item. Here also we can see purchase requisition plus reservation, and here purchasing data, there will not be any purchase requisition, and the purchasing group, purchase organization, price, align the finish date. That means this date is aligned to finish date, it is not manually required date. Cost relevance is there, that means 100% cost relevance is there. The unit price multiplied by the quantity will be calculated in the planned cost. And procurement parameters, if we see, it is also from release, and here the account assignment category is Q, and the material type and procurement committed quantity is 0. So this is the information for item category L. So if one more thing we can notice over here is unit costing. Unit costing for the cost planning purpose. This is the cost estimate for the unit costing. The costing variant is PS04. We can, if required, we can put base object and WBS element, network, operation or activity, material, and version key. So this is the cost estimate will be created from this activity line item. That means the material which is assigned to the activity, we can make it out for the unit costing. Now other one is procurement parameters. This is at the moment purchase requisition reservation for the WBS element. It is selected. Now we'll save this activity and we'll see the planned cost for this activity. Now we can see this network has been saved. Now we'll go to that activity, internal processing activity, for which we have assigned the material, and we can check it out the actual cost for this material, sorry, planned cost for this material. We'll go to component overview, and for this activity cost, unit costing, edit, otherwise we'll go to this material, unit costing, here this we can create the unit costing R for the estimate purpose, and we'll check for the non-stockable item. These also costs are there. Now we'll check for this particular activity planned cost. We'll go to planned cost for this activity. After assigning the materials to the activity, the cost will be 1,91,192 US dollars, and actual is 0. Now similarly, if we go to the header notification, update costs, the cost has been updated. So here we have assigned the materials directly to the activity, and we can see we will try to assign the materials to the activities from project builder for the internal processing. We'll go to project builder, Once it is saved, we'll go to project builder. The path will be SAP menu, logistics, process system, and project builder, and we'll take the same project, go to the project. Here we can see the materials where we assign to the network activity. So here we can see the materials has been assigned. From here only we can see item number 10, 20, 30, 40, and this is non-stockable items. Similarly, now we will assign the materials directly from the project builder without entering into network. Now we'll select one more network. Here this is the internal processing PS01. It is already there, so we can use this. In this activity, we'll go to component overview, then we'll select the material, quantity we have selected, then purchase organization. Similarly, we will select one more material, quantity will be 1. Now this time we will select a material for non-stockable item purpose. That means it will be consumed immediately without taking into the project inventory. So this is item category N, non-stockable, and we can see over here this WS element has been not assigned because this account assignment will be for network, and if required we can go for one more material for non-stock. Before entering only we have to assign the item category. If required we can take non-coded material also here. If you are taking non-coded material, quantity is 5, unit is each, and non-stock company code, we are putting material group as this, GL account, currency USD1 as a unit. Then we have to queue the requirement date, and here we are entering the description, non-coded material 1. So this way we have directly attached the materials to internal processing activity. Now here only we can directly see the planned cost for this activity. Once it is saved. We'll go to costs, activity saved. We are saving the project. This project has been saved. Now we'll go back to the project. Here we have assigned the materials, activity cost, $9,071 is a planned cost. So now if you check the material component, this is purchase requisition plus reservation for WBS element, and this activity with the settlement rule for this 321 BFS. So this material also will be having the same WBS element because this component has been assigned to this activity. So this is the way to assign the material directly to the activity. Now one more thing what we check is the materials requirement. So for that materials requirement, I have to go to logistics, project system, then material, planning, MD04. This is a requirement list. Now here we have to say the material, and this is a plan. Press enter. It will give this material requirement list as on date. Now this is the requirement list as on the date. Available quantity is 3 and system is showing that there is no requirement. So for this material, if we see the requirement date is in the future, so the requirement list cannot be considered as on date requirement list. So the stock is available quantity is 4 and as on date there is no requirement. So if you see the here, this requirement date is 28/2014. If we change this requirement date to current date, the system will consider So unrestricted use is 3, and there is no requirements are required as on date are there. So now we'll change the requirement date to current date, and we'll see whether this requirement list will be changed or not. Now this requirement date we are changing to 30/1/2014 and save. This is manual requirement date, and we make it to quantity 1. Now this is saved. Now we'll see the requirement list. We'll refresh the requirement list. We'll go back and we'll check the MRP element data is not there. Now we need to check whether this material as considered in the MRP view or not. If it is not considered for the MRP view, then this will not be considered for material requirement planning. To check the material master display, the transaction code is MM03 and the plant will be 3000. MRPs will check, enter, plant, storage location, for this material MRP group has been not selected and MRP type is no planning. That is reason why this material is not being considered for the MRP requirement list. To consider for the MRP planning, this should be as MRP or with any MRP fixing type. If it is codified with no planning, then this material will not be considered in any of the MRP requirement list or in any MRP run also. So again we'll take back to some other date. So this is about the material assignment to activities. Now if we run a material requirement planning for a project, the transaction code will be MD51. The path will be SAP menu, project system, material, planning and MRP project. So if we want to run MRP for a particular project, MD51, and we have to give the project name with hierarchy. That means all the WBS elements will be considered and purchase requisitions to be created if we consider like this, and display the material list. Now this will be processing key is this, create purchase requisition 1, HA schedule and 3, create MRP list 3, planning mode 1, scheduling 1. So if you see the list of materials, no elements exist for the selection. Project report, no reservations relevant to MRP exist for this project. So these many materials has been considered, but none of the material is considered under MRP planning. That is the reason why this MRP is not applicable to this project. So this is about assigning the materials to internal processing activity and creating stockable item procurement and non-stockable item procurement, and how to check the MRP requirement list. So this is material